Even the start button on it. Alright, that's going for me. Let me know when yours is on.
Yep. Just checking audio levels again. Yeah, camera is on. It's recording. I'm sitting down. Give me a second.
Hang on, sorry. My mic is falling over.
No problem.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another Lab Maniacs Competitive EDH set review. We are bringing this one to you sooner than most of the time because, as usual in the summer, they tend to pack in a whole bunch of sets. For instance, did you know that Core 2020 comes out like next month or something?
What?
Yeah, I know. We haven't even gotten spoilers for it. Nobody remembered it was a
Wow.
set.
Okay.
And of course, that did give us the Chainveil one time, so who knows. But today, we are bringing you the review of what is likely to be a much more relevant set than Core 2020, and that is, of course, the first in the attempt to introduce power creep rotation into Modern Horizons 1. Featuring such all-stars as, why isn't Agrolome Tier 1? Is Tron still a deck? What are we doing? So, yeah, I guess let's just jump in. Modern Horizons is a set that Wizards has created to print cards directly into the modern format. It is thus a supplemental product, which means the power level is significantly higher than in standard legal products, which means we're probably getting some goodies. Although, honestly, the power level of War may have been higher for our format.
It depends.
It's
I
close.
think we'll have to see. Like, War in particular had like a handful of really huge role player cards, and then it had a bunch of viable stuff. And Modern Horizons has a lot of good cards, but many of them aren't gonna have the type of impact that's gonna change how the format is played, because like Narset's Reversal alone basically changed how people need to approach playing on the stack.
Yeah, that is very true. Let's just jump into the set review at this point.
Yeah, sounds good.
First up, we have White with Generous Gift. Generous Gift is an instant that costs 2 and a white. It is an uncommon that reads Destroy target permanent its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. If this seems familiar, that's because it is. The white shifted version of the color pie break that is Beast Within.
Yeah, that's literally what it is.
Yeah.
Like, if Beast Within was played in some green decks that didn't really have a lot of other options, and it was also useful in decks like Tasiga for doing Beast Within Reality Shift spell loops, which is kind of the predecessor to all of the Time Twister stuff we're seeing nowadays. Generous Gift is essentially the same, but for white. So if you have a white deck that needs a type of generic removal and is willing to go up to 3 mana to pay for it, then this card is definitely, I think, probably the best option, actually.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot of Vindicates in mono white.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there aren't any.
Yeah.
So you're
like,
kind of priced into this one.
Mono white, I can kind of see it in like maybe blue white, depending on whether you value the flexibility higher than the cheap mana cost of like a Pongify. Depends.
Yeah. Overall, not too bad. Beast Within sees play a little bit, so this will see play a little bit maybe.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a card that'll see less play. On Thin Ice. This is the cold shifted version of Chain to the Rocks. A 1 white mana snow enchantment aura enchants snowland you control. When On Thin Ice enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until On Thin Ice leaves the battlefield. Now, Chain to the Rocks is more or less useless because the chances of us having a plains in play are very low in almost every deck. So tying our unconditional exile removal to having a plains in play is pretty poor form.
Yeah.
That being said, we are on the cusp of potentially getting more snow lands.
Is that so?
If the rumors and seeding of Kaldheim in fall are to be believed. Um,
Oh yeah, right.
I've
There's
heard a
like
lot
a
of
set
talks.
logo and everything
Yeah,
already revealed, right?
there's some good evidence that we might be going to the frigid north, and I think Garrick is supposed to be there, maybe killing wolves or
Hmm.
something.
Interesting.
It's looking like we might see Wolf, Garrick, and snow stuff. And if there's snow stuff, Aunt the Nice might be playable because if I can put this onto my snow hallowed fountain, all of a sudden it gets a lot better.
That is true, yeah. So I don't think it's particularly playable right now, but uh as we continue to get snow stuff, like I think we can make a more general point about Modern Horizons here. It seems like the design team at Wizards has been looking into providing more support for these like kind of fringe things like
Scred,
snow permanence, yeah. And
astral slide, that kind of
exactly.
stuff.
With
Yeah.
them paying more attention to this kind of stuff and to completing cycles and whatnot, there is a good chance that we'll see a fair bit more snow support in the years to come, in which case, like you said, this might become more worthy of consideration in a number of decks.
Next up, we have Ranger Captain of Eos. This is a questionable mythic alongside the red equivalent. 2 white mana and 1 generic for a 3/3 human soldier. When Ranger Captain of Eos enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 1 or less, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Sacrifice Ranger Captain of Eos. Your opponents can cast non-creature spells this turn. This is
That's
basically half a Ranger of Eos stapled to kind of a silence.
yeah, that's a really like curious combination of abilities, I feel.
Yeah, so being able to tutor 1-drops out is never bad. And having a second functional mode where you kind of give yourself a defense grid for a turn is also not bad.
Yeah.
Stapled together, this card is potentially something that can see play in Obzon or similar color scale farm decks, anything looking to abuse 1-drops,
A,
maybe getting a Viscera Seer out or something like that.
perhaps a certain Phyrexian Dreadnought Greater Good deck.
There could be something like that in there as well. It could also get a Vesper Lark.
Oh
But
yeah,
that's a
it
one
can.
drop, I think.
Wait,
But isn't it? No, that's a
no, no,
three
no, it's a
drop.
three
Just kidding.
drop.
I got excited. I forgot that things go the other way. I thought it was a 1-drop that you could evoke for 3, but that would be stupid. Whatever. Anyways, you can't get a Vesper Lark, but you might be able to get some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Since this is just white, let's keep moving. Next up, we have a card that I will not contribute an opinion on until you have spoken, Sigi.
Hmm.
Sisay, Weatherlight Captain. She
Oh
is a
yeah,
legendary creature human soldier. 2 and 1 white. For a 2/2. Sisay, Weatherlight Captain gets +1/+1 for each color among legendary permanents you control. Other legendary permanents, so she does not make herself a 3/3. For 1 Wooburg, you may search your library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, put that card on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So on the face, she is a 3 mana 2/2 that you can pay Wooburg for and tutor 2-drop legendary permanents or less. And then you can kind of scale that up a little bit. Siggy, what do you have on Sisay?
So let's start with the interesting stuff. Like, once she hits the battlefield, she can tutor out stuff like Gaia's Cradle without having to do anything. At the same time, paying 5 mana for a Gaia's Cradle is not exactly great. Now, what else can she do? She is an infinite mana outlet if you can make infinite mana of all colors. For those of you that have played Breya in the past with Dramatic Reversal Isochron Scepter, making 4 colors of that is already quite the challenge. Making 5 colors with just non-land mana sources is an absolute nightmare.
Although, I will say, in Sisei's favor, I think it is easier to make Wooburg in 5-color than it is to make Sansgreen in Sansgreen. Because one
I
Bird of
guess that's
Paradise
fair.
gets you there.
Yeah.
But
like,
it's still a tall order.
Yeah. So let's say for now that like the Dramatic Scepter plan isn't particularly viable. How else can we make infinite mana of any color? We've got World Gorger Dragon and Bomberman, both of which are kinda all-in, kinda fragile combos. And if we're being completely honest here, and I hate to say this, but Thrasios Tymna just does it better.
Given that optimal Sisei decks currently will tutor out a Thrasios on her first activation, yeah, I would say that's you can just
Pretty
put them in the
much.
command zone and also have a Tymna.
Yeah.
And they
Like,
both draw you cards.
realistically speaking, on an absolute scale, you can definitely play this new Sisei and compete just fine at a table. But from a standpoint of there being like a unique niche where she can shine or outperform other decks, I don't really think that exists.
Yeah, that sounds about right. She gives you access to Red Elemental Blast in your Thrasios combo deck at the cost of a good commander.
Yeah.
That's kind of it as far as what I'm seeing.
It's not really worth. Like, the extra color is not worth losing Thrasios and Tymna in the command zone, sadly.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
She is a cool design, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm okay if they start pushing more mana outlet tutors. You know, like, that's a pretty good design space. I'm okay if they work in there.
Yeah.
Just maybe power it up a little bit. Next up, we have Vesper Lark, which is the adorable little sibling of Revelark, I guess. It is a 2 and a white 2/1 for a creature elemental flying. When Vesper Lark leaves the battlefield, return target creature card with power 1 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Evoke for 1 and a white. It's just a small Revelark, but luckily you can do infinite death loops pretty effectively with just 2 creatures, so.
I'm not quite sure about the Hulk pile applications of this one yet, but compared to Revelark being... Is Revelark 4 or 5 mana?
5 mana.
Oof.
Evoke for 6.
Yeah, this one's much easier to fit into Hulk piles while also doing other stuff. So, like, for the space that Revelark would have taken up in your Hulk pile, you could instead get, for instance, this and a Grand Abolisher to protect yourself.
Or this and a Blood Artist to set up a kill.
Or that.
Yeah, in going positively infinite, this is significantly worse because it can only like replace itself basically. But given that we now have access to Flash Hulk, you don't really need to go positively infinite from your deck. You can just win with the piles you make. So there's going to be something there at some point.
Yeah.
And with that, we can move on to a good color. Blue, the best color. First up, we have Echo of Aeons. This is the modern legal time twister. For 4 and 2 blue, you can get a mythic rare sorcery that says each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library and then draws 7 cards. That's not time twister, Dan. But wait, there's more. It flashes back for 2 and a blue. So it is either, on the nose, a time twister that doesn't exile, so you can do non-Narset reversal time twister loops in budget, because this thing's probably going to be like 40 or 50 bucks. Or you can flash it back and have an actual literal time twister that exiles itself in modern now. But yeah, so Sigi, take it away.
I think budget Time Twister puts it quite well. Like, Time Twister is obscenely expensive, and if you're playing in sanctioned events, you can't proxy. So you need stand-ins. So far, Memory's Journey has been one, and there's definitely like a uh, question of whether Memory's Journey or this is a better slot, and I think it's going to depend on, first of all, obviously, whether you can run Memory's Jar in your color identity, and secondly, on whether the front half, the 6-mana Time Twister on Echo of Eons, is more useful than the Graveyard Hate or regrowth into deck effect Memory's Journey can provide for you during a normal game.
Yeah. As someone who plays a lot of budget Thrasios builds in tinkering and refining, I am actually planning on playing both because Memory's Journey is a much more reliable card to loop.
Mhm.
But both this and Memory's Journey have the like, oh shit button flashback mode. So I have consumed that in games, and sometimes that puts you at a disadvantage. So this
Yeah.
gives me something I can play main deck that's also not bad that
That's
can be
true.
used to loop. It basically would replace like a walking ballista slot because it goes well with Notion Thief. It has a very trivial flashback mode of a very useful card in a pinch, and it still provides me with a backup loop potential.
Yeah. I think one point in favor of this card is that you do actually have 2 Twister effects in just one card. So if you think that you're gonna need to Twister twice on, let's say, one turn and then the turn after that, then this could also be useful. There are decks that benefit from going Twister or Wheel every other turn.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool card. I'm glad Wizards is attempting to print power into Modern. I think
Yeah.
it is not too long before we get Ancestral Recall in Standard, but maybe don't quote me on that.
What else? Oh yeah. Did you see the legacy thing with like Storm and LED and Echo of Eons?
I didn't, but it is pretty silly that you can crack an LED and
Yeah.
cast Time Twister in Legacy now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily balanced.
We'll have to see. I'm
They did ban that card from Legacy, and now they gave it Black Lotus Time Twister. Banned both those cards from Legacy.
It'll be fun.
It will be fun. Next up, we have one card that's really 3 cards if you look at it close enough. We have Fairy Seer, we have Fallen Shinobi, and
Mhm.
we have oh shoot, what's the changeling's name? The unblockable changeling.
Yeah,
He's
what
over there.
changeling something.
These cards are the generic. Yuriko is actually getting some potentially decent cards this set, and Yuriko is like fringe enough that we're going to talk about this because she is one of the she's would you say I hate this question because it's unanswerable, like what deck is like 1 or 2 cards away from being a viable deck,
Mm.
but it's Yuriko, right? Like
So I'm actually kind of starting to feel that Yuriko is like kind of similar to Edric, but with a potentially higher ceiling just because black cards are stupidly good.
it's true.
And Yuriko in particular, I think, is a deck that is like in the parasitic section of decks, stuff like Tygum, for instance, if everyone's going hard on counter spells. And she works well in these really grindy mid-range games where everyone has a bunch of interaction, but nobody really wants to spend it. I think that's the place where Yuriko just comes in and has her life drain ability, and she just draws a lot of cards, and she doesn't particularly care about counter spells either, because she can just command a ninjutsu.
Yeah, and her entire deck is like her entire support cast is just shitters that you're never going to spend an actual creature removal spell on. So
Yeah, and then after she's drawn like 10 cards or who knows what, and you try to Toxic Deluge her because she's actually becoming a problem, she's just gonna sit there with like 5 counter spells and 10 open mana or whatnot.
yep. In a deck that cannot necessarily easily say turn 1 I want to ponder, having a 1/1 flyer that scries 2 or indexes 4 or something like that is pretty much as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
Also, this card in Pauper.
Oh yeah.
I'm so ready to spell Stutter Sprite some people again. That card is I love that. I love fairies. I
It's a
really
neat
hope
deck.
that it can be playable in Modern.
Yeah.
But I am not hopeful.
Yeah, Modern's
Next
a
up.
bit too far gone off the deep end for now.
Yeah. Force of Negation. 1 and 2 blue. Ha ha. For an instant, if it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard.
So, I mean, this is obviously strictly better than Force of Will because you can use it on 1 life after you add Nors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, this is not better than Force of Will in any way, shape, or form. The
It's also
exile
not
cards,
much worse.
yeah, and that is really exciting. Now, this is a thing we've talked about when we had Dovin's veto on the War of the Spark set review, and that also applies here. This card is quite obviously bad at protecting your own stuff when you're trying to win on your own turn. However, it's really, really, really good when you're trying to stop someone else, or just like general stuff is happening when it's not your turn. If you can use this to counter some form of like win condition or outlet,
A
it's
regrowth or a time twister.
yeah, for instance, then it can become really awkward for your opponents when they're trying to win.
Not having cards you need to win in your deck makes it hard to win. I think
One could
you've
say that.
specifically had some problems with that in the past, Sigi.
Yeah, but as I said before, that was entirely due to incompetence on my part.
Not at every point. Sometimes I just fairy macabre you.
Oh yeah, right. That's
That
happened.
has also
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Force of Negation seems really cool. It's a card that I am very likely going to run in my Scepter Thrasios decks,
hmm
but for example, probably won't run in Shimmerzer.
I think that's correct. Like, that's about how I feel about the card.
Yeah.
I'm also going to be running it in a lot of my more interactive decks. One thing that does need to be said, though, is that
The
we
art is
have
sweet as shit.
that also needs to be said,
Oh.
but there is a point to be made about now having 3 pitch counter spells that are all playable in Force of Will, Force of Negation, and Misdirection. And you do while they do obviously pitch to each other, you do kind of have to like keep an eye on whether you actually run enough blue cards in your deck to make playing more than say 2 worthwhile.
Yeah. As a person who has done literally zero hypergeometric math on this, my personal threshold is going to be tacking 3 blue pips onto the minimum force count for each additional pitch counter I want to play. So if force is at 28, which is like my hard low, 31 gets me another one, 34 gets me my third.
Mm-hmm.
And most decks can achieve that. But
Yeah,
most decks also don't want all 3 of them anyways, because like Misdirection has some pretty intense deck building constraints,
that's true.
because it's fat as
Like,
hell.
it's specifically going to be interesting, I think, for 4-color Rush Me or Curious Control. The people also seem to love that name, by the way.
I know.
Because we already have Force and Misdirection in there, because we, like, want Misdirection to protect our engines. And
you don't play add-ons, so there's no real cost.
Yeah. So getting a third one there is something I'm not 100% sure about. It's likely gonna go in, but I'll need to think about it some more.
I'm pretty sure it's just certified good shit.
Probably.
Tribute Mage. This is a 2 blue for a 2/2 human wizard. When Tribute Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 2, reveal that card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. In the spirit of Trinket Mage, and Trophy Mage, and Treasure Mage, now we have the middle one of the bottom tier. Tribute Mage on 2 has some notable targets, let's say. Sigi, would you like to talk more?
Yeah. It can find Demir Signet, for instance.
Yeah. Or Sword of the Parins? What? No.
Sword of the
what
Meek
is that?
is also
Sword of the
2 CMC.
Meek. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, no, this finds Isochron Scepter.
Oh, it does.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, for decks that run black at least, you do need to consider whether just finding Isochron Scepter or finding like a Signet in the fail case is really worth it over the black tutors. For heavily budgeted decks, I think it will be, but for budgeted decks, I'm not so sure.
I agree. In a deck where the only real hit on this is Isochron Scepter, it's not necessarily that good a card. In a deck like maybe a mono blue Scepter deck, where it can hit Scepter or Null Rod if you play that, or similar kind of hate pieces, maybe this card's a little better.
Maybe.
I'm playing in my $100 Thrasios deck.
Oh yeah, that's
so there's
it's
that.
Great there.
Yeah, it's pretty good. 2/2 Tymna, tutor. Nice stuff.
For sure.
Speaking of mono blue Scepter decks,
oh yes,
there's a particular legendary creature that you guys may not have heard much talk about. He kind of flew under the radar when he got spoiled. This is actually Ursa this time getting a card. You may have missed it due to the fact that Ursa's last cards don't have Ursa on them. But this one has his name in the top, so it's a bit more obvious. This is Ursa, Lord High Artificer, a legendary creature. Human Artificer costs 2 and 2 blue for a 1/4. When Ursa, Lord High Artificer enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 colors construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Tap an untapped artifact you control. Add 1 blue mana. 5 generic mana, shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until the end of the turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. So this is a 4 mana 1/4. ETB, make a Karn Scion of Urza token. All of your artifacts are Mox Sapphires. 5 mana, put a copy of Mind's Desire on the stack.
Okay.
You know, I feel like there might be something here, Sigi. Would you care to discuss?
Yeah. So, where to start? Like, he costs 4 mana, he blocks, so you can play him decently early in the game. He's a 1/4, so he blocks Tymna. He comes with a Construct, which also blocks Tymna really, 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 really well.
Probably going to be a 3/3 minimum when you cast him, like most likely.
Yeah. And the Construct also refunds one of the mana you spent to cast Ursa. So, like, you pay your 4 mana and then you immediately have another mana again to, like, protect Ursa or do whatever else you want. What else can he do? And like, if you have a non-mana rock artifact in play, that also immediately gets turned on. So it's not impossible that you play Ursa and then you suddenly have 3 mana available again, and you can just keep going.
We could talk about the fact that you can tap Howling Mine for mana on your turn, or a Static Orb on your opponent's end step
Yeah,
for mana,
he
shutting them off because that's how mono artifacts used to work.
he breaks parity on those really hard, especially like Static Orb. I think is the biggest one because only untapping 2 permanents while you get to untap everything, and then all of your stuff also is just Mox Sapphires, is absolutely insane.
Mox Sapphires that function through a Null Rod,
Yes.
we should specify.
This card just does everything. And while it obviously
You
gets
haven't even
stopped
mentioned
by
the outlet part.
Cursed Totem, this
So it's
only
like the
gets like
format.
it gets inconvenienced by Cursed Totem, and it only gets inconvenienced by Null Rod. If you compare it to like Teferi, who gets fucking stopped in his tracks by a Null Rod, it's not even funny. I mean,
Yeah. You
oh
can
my god.
literally win through a Null Rod. You can play Null Rod in your Paradox Scepter deck if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Because you just cast it, and then you just like dirtle yourself with Paradox Engine, which doesn't require a single artifact to activate an ability at any point.
To be completely honest, you likely still shouldn't play Null Rod,
Sure,
because
but like the
if you
fact
lose
that
access
you
to Ursa, it sucks. But
can in your PST deck, you
you
can.
could if you wanted to. Just having the option
It's
is
bananas.
absolutely incredible. And then the outlet part. So yeah, this guy makes infinite mana. He is insane with Paradox Engine. Now, not as insane as Thrasios, because it's 5 mana for a random card off the top of your deck, and you can't like chain activations of this and Senses Divining Top, for instance. Thrasios also sees 2 cards or up to 2 cards with his Scry, which means that the effective mana cost of like getting 1 spell off the activation is significantly higher. But that's okay, because he just does a lot of other stuff that's completely absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, your Urza. You're gonna see this guy a lot.
Yeah, and I
Like a lot.
think in the long run, like once we've properly got him figured out, I do think he's gonna settle at a higher power level than Teferi.
Yeah. But you should keep your Teferi cards for when that dick shows up on Kess and his friend also plays Kess and you're expecting double
Oh yeah,
Curse Totem in a game. Because Teferi is pretty good about that with his, like, 3 creatures.
yeah. But yeah, Urza just kinda has it all. He's got the mono blue card pool, which lends itself towards like a mid-range controlling
Winning.
game plan.
Oh,
That
yeah,
as well.
sure.
He's an infinite mana outlet. He works well with cards he can actually tutor for. He can break parity on some incredibly strong hate pieces.
Honestly, he's just got too many lines of text. Like, he probably does more than a legendary creature should. He is
Maybe.
above average on how much power you get for your mana cost. He produces mana, and he uses that mana in an unbounded method.
Now,
That's...
realistically speaking, though, Urza is not going to be a stronger deck than Paradox Scepter Thrasios or any of the big 3 Flash Hulk variants. He is gonna settle somewhere near the top of the format, but he is not broken to the point of like where we as competitive players think he's a plague on the format or anything like that. He's just
Yeah.
really good. And it's okay for cards to be really, really good.
Mm-hmm. He's probably the best Paradox Scepter deck at, like, $500.
Possibly,
Probably
yeah.
at $750.
It's kind of hard to say because like Paradox Engine just keeps shooting up, and then all of a sudden you're
Yeah, I
paying like
know.
a fifth of your budget just for that one card.
Yeah. But even then, like, you just play Scepter and then, like, mono blue whatever the fuck you want, and you've still got a good deck.
Basically, yeah.
Ursa has a very high ceiling. Alright. On to a not as good card. Watcher for Tomorrow. This is 1 and a blue for a 2/1. Creature human wizard with Hideaway. For those of you who aren't sure what Hideaway means, it just means you impulse, but instead of putting it in your hand, you put it under this dude. And then when he leaves the battlefield, then you put it in your hand. So this is a slow 2/1 impulse wizard. Sigi.
Seems good in exactly Anala.
Yeah, yeah.
Because in her case, you essentially get one impulse up front and another impulse a bit further down the line if you block stuff or anything. And I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Outside of Inala, I'm not really feeling it.
It's probably also good in budget decks.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's an impulse that kills Tymna and Agila, so.
Yeah, that's fair.
Speaking of things that kill Tymna and Agila, we have a much more interesting one. Dead of Winter. Now you might be thinking, Dan, Dead of Winter? This card sucks. And you'd be right. This is 2 and a black for a sorcery that says all non-snow creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the number of snow permanents you control. Obviously, only hitting non-snow creatures means this is going to be pretty severely limited. The only like relevant non-snow creatures in our format are things like Tymna, Nagila, Every Manadork, Thrasios, Zur, Gitrog. Oh, I guess all of them. Hang on. I mean... Right. Sorry. This card sucks because there's no good snow permanents yet besides basics. That's what I was going to talk about. If Kaldheim gives us Snow Shocks, that's why actually both of these snow cards, but they're not snow cards. Well, this one's not a snow card. They're both snow adjacent. Are in this review because snow dual lands, even of lesser power than like the OG cycle, are what I think these types of cards will take to become relevant. If I'm playing Dead of Winter, this is a 3-mana board wipe. So it has to compare to something like Anger of the Gods on the face for me as a sorcery, which is going to be 3 damage to everything. Right now, if I am playing Dead of Winter remotely near on curve, to get -3/-3, I would need 3 basic lands in play. And that's not where you want to be in almost any game.
Yeah.
If I can have 2 Snow Shocks that I've fetched, this is a much more reasonable thing because like paying life for a Snow Shock early is pretty similar to paying life into a Toxic Deluge early. But you have a bit more flexibility on how to use it.
And like if you have it in your opener, you can play towards that.
Exactly.
So I've just got one question, because I pretty much agree with all of your analysis. Dead of Winter, board wipe versus board game, which one's better?
Board game. Dead of Winter is a pretty chill game. I heard there was an expansion that I haven't played, but it adds like some different mechanics. Like there are, you know how in well, actually pick any piece of zombie fiction you want, but I'm thinking of the Left 4 Dead franchise. There are like classes of zombie, like you have your spitters and your hulks and all that. Apparently the Dead of Winter expansion actually adds in stuff like that.
Oh boy.
Also, there's monkeys, and they added in Perca-Cola.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how I feel about that. But Dead of Winter's base game is pretty chill.
Yeah, I
like just it. Like play the truck driver, get a sniper rifle, and you're set. Speaking of truck drivers with sniper rifles, Plague Engineer. This is a carrier creature, 2 into black for a 2/2 Death Touch. As Plague Engineer enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type your opponents control get -1/-1. This may both look and sound familiar if you are a Legacy player, because Engineered Plague was a pretty big sideboard card back in the day, back when a 3 mana -1/-1 to elves was a relevant thing to do with your sideboard. I'm thinking like Punishing Jund circa 2014. It's been a long time since then, but.
And I mean, I think this could have similar applications in competitive EDH if you know that like all of your playgroup is on dog decks and you're not, or you're playing a deck that already wants to kill mana dogs. Then this could be a decent option. Like, naming elves with this means that the only viable mana dogs are like Deathrite Shaman, Noble Hierarch. Ever since Pilgrim is a human, I think?
Yes, and Birds of Paradise.
Yeah. Which, if you compare it to Priest of Titania, is Bloomtender also an elf?
Mm-hmm. Most of them are.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Priest of Titania, Bloomtender, Llanowar elves, Findhorn elves, Elvish Mystic, elves with Deep Shadow. What other elves are there? A lot of them.
Yeah. I don't know.
So
Reclamation Sage.
If they run the full suite, then this hits them really hard. And 3 mana is not improbable on turn 2. So if like turn order lines up, for instance, and they were planning to do like a turn 2 Timler play, then you can take them off that by doing turn 2 Plague Engineer, for instance.
Yeah, I like it a lot. For a while, Luke was talking about a card that he can use post Blood Moon to clean up dorks. And I mean, he cycled through stuff as deep as Electrickery.
Yeah.
So having an actually decent static one that hits basically everything in Plague Engineer seems like a better use of that kind of slot.
That sounds good, yeah.
It also can draw you cards with Tymna, and it can kill a Gitrog.
Oh, it has Death Touch?
It has Death Touch. It's a pretty good card. I really like it, honestly.
Yeah, that's not bad.
In comparison, let's move on to a different card that, Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. For 2 and 2 black, you get a legendary creature, Human Cleric, a 2/4 with protection from humans. Pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature, and draw a card. Black, discard a card, proliferate. Sigi, tell me what you think about Human Yawgmoth.
I think his design is very appropriate considering that it is human Yawgmoth. I don't think he's particularly powerful. He's a very neat synergistic card that you can build a cool deck around. He has a place in, I think, exactly like Hapatra and maybe Gave. For like competitive EDH.
Sounds about right.
I don't think he's going to get there as a commander. Like, he doesn't do enough, and the mono black card pool is actually really shallow.
To support what Siggy is talking about, I have a couple of friends who have built Yawgmoth decks already, like pretty tuned ones, and their power cap is pretty much play EDH high power level. He's a good card, but he is not a infinite mana outlet. He does not provide guaranteed card advantage, and his abilities, like, they're fine, but they take a lot of resources. They're not free abilities. You have to sacrifice creatures, which means you're spending cards that you've already paid mana on, or you're discarding cards from your hand and spending mana to do other things. Like, you don't gain resources from him, you spend resources on him.
Yeah. And if you like play cards that make his effects advantageous and not just be on parity or even disadvantage. That's like extra cards you have to find, and setting up this whole machinery is a very exciting thing to do, I can imagine. Like getting a piece here and getting a piece there, and putting them all together and seeing it all line up. But
That's Johnny.
yeah, exactly. And I think he's gonna be a very cool card for like mid to high power, like you said.
I'm excited for when we see Spirit Yawgmoth. He's probably
Yeah.
that's gonna be closer to on par with Ursa.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, people were expecting this Yawgmoth to be Ursa tier power level, but his human form wasn't that strong. Now, once we do get other Yawgmoth, it's a different story altogether, because that guy wrecks.
So here's the real question. Is Spirit Yawgmoth or Sparked Ursa actually something that can see print at any point? Like, are they inherently undeliverable?
You mean like from a like narrative, a ludo
No, I
narrative
mean
design
yeah,
standpoint?
basically. Like if I design a card that is intended to represent Yawgmoth after he has become a spirit, like the spirit of Phyrexia, can I deliver on that card design in a satisfactory way? Because it has to hit a specific power level to reasonably reflect the character.
I
But is that power level, like, reasonably reachable?
I actually think you can, but it's with a bit of a loophole. Do you remember that promo card they did, I think last year, Moodo?
Oh my god.
That's how they could print a post-Spark Ursa or a Spirit Yawgmoth and have them be
Actually, I agree, yeah.
appropriate, but it just completely busted.
Yeah. They can, like, tickle the brain of the Magic community, and then we can go back to never seeing them.
More or less. I mean, obviously the players would want those cards as like actually legal things to play with, but I'm not sure if it's gonna be possible from a balance perspective.
I doubt it. That being said, I really hope they do that, because I do have plans to eventually buy a Moto. And yes, I'm aware that I need to, like, win the lottery to make that happen, because the only one that's even been offered for a price is like 20K, but still.
Jesus.
I mean, there's only like 5 of them. It's like
That's
buying
true.
a Shizufukujin drag or whatever the fuck you had me at.
Shichifukujin.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
On the topic of red cards, here's a better one. Goblin Engineer. This is a 1 and a red Goblin
Oh,
Artificer,
yeah.
a 1/2. When Goblin Engineer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. So entomb an artifact. Red, tap. Sacrifice an artifact. Return target artifact with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is an entomb Goblin Welder, limited to smallish stuff.
Yeah.
What you got?
It's Goblin Welder is the kind of card that's always been like on the fringe of cEDH play. People have brewed with it, and a lot of the brews where it ends up in are the type that like go really, really all in on artifacts.
You would have to have consistent artifacts in the graveyard
Yeah.
and on the battlefield to
I mean,
cycle for value.
it depends. I think like 20 artifacts is enough to get like cheap artifact into big payoff artifact. Goblin Engineer doesn't have any sort of limitation in terms of CMC or so, does it?
Not on what it entombs, just on what it reanimates.
So you couldn't like reanimate a Bolas' Citadel, say.
Not with the Engineer.
Okay, but with the Goblin Welder.
Yeah, and you can, so like if you have 2 of them, you can do both halves. You can entomb the big thing with Engineer, you can welder it back with the actual welder.
Mm-hmm.
And then on subsequent turns, you can like swap the big thing into a small thing for value, like an ETB trigger, like swap Bolas' Citadel into a, I don't know, a Mycosynth Wellspring or something to just like cantrip, sack that back into Citadel, cantrip again, get the thing, but like so you can like do some spinning your wheels shenanigans that I hate.
So it's another card in the category of cards that's highly synergistic for a particular strategy. And those kind of strategies can get there if we get enough density. But I'm not quite sure if we are already there yet. That's my main concern. I want them to keep printing cards like this, absolutely, because once we've got that critical mass, I think there's gonna be a very good deck that plays those cards. And
The problem with this kind of synergistic effect is that synergy kind of falls short when you can just flash a Hulk.
That is a bit of a problem, yeah.
Like, why play this 6-piece revolving value engine when you can just win with 2?
But I do think there's an argument to be made for stuff that if you have enough density and drawing a second piece is actually a good thing and not a bad thing, then there is some merit to be had from that.
Yeah, we're getting there. 2 Goblin Welders, one of whom entombs is almost enough, probably. I want to see the blue-red one. I think if we get a blue-red one, we may be approaching, like, what I want.
Yeah, maybe.
For this strategy. Next up, we have Collector Oof. Oof is a beautiful creature type, and curiously, it is also an onomatopoeia for the sound most of us will make when you put a Collector Oof into play.
Yep.
That is because this 2/2 for 1 and a green says activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. That's right, we finally got the Null Rod Bear, and they put it in the good color. And I'm smiling, but really I'm dead inside. Because I haven't played Hate Bears in a long time, and this one's actually good. Like, where was this motherfucker when I had Carador? I don't even own a Carador anymore.
Wow, damn.
I mean, I traded it to Will, and he plays Carador, so, like, it's not like it's gone, but still. Null Rod Bear.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Null Rod. You can find it with Green Sun's Zenith or literally any other creature tutor in existence. There's not much else to say. It's a really good card, and it being a creature is really good because the decks that tend to play creature tutors tend to be mana dog decks that don't play a lot of artifacts, so they like Null Rod effects, and this one is one they can tutor for with ease.
Yeah, so how are you feeling about Yisan having a Null Rod on verse 2?
Really bad.
Yeah, like, there aren't many 1 cards that just jump a deck from Fringe to probably much stronger than Fringe. But this might be one of them.
Yeah.
Like, if you can guarantee a Null Rod Bear on turn 3 every game.
Yisan is the kind of deck that's like really stood the test of time and that has a bunch of places where it's good in. And now it's got even more places where it's good in. Because now you can just do verse 2, Collector Roof, and yeah.
Reap the rewards of a salty table.
Basically.
Speaking of things Yisan gets that dick me, Force of Vigor. This is an instant for 2 and 2 green. If it's not your turn, you may exile a green card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Destroy up to 2 artifacts and or enchantments. All right.
So I don't know if there isn't a better way to word this, like, and or stuff, because when the card was spoiled, I briefly thought you could, like, remove 2 artifacts
4?
and 2 enchantments.
Yeah.
In which case, this card would have been absolutely incredible. As is,
no, that would be bananas. Man, 4 nature's claims.
Yeah, can you imagine? Like,
I don't want to imagine.
It would even be worth paying actual mana for.
Yeah, I would if this card hit 2 artifacts and 2 enchantments, like up to 4 of that, I would probably play this in PST.
Totally.
Or maybe an E-Man, but like still, like this would get in the blue-black mid-range lists.
It might still be playable there, depending on how many green cards you've got.
Yeah, I do actually plan to get a copy of this because it's close enough to being useful in slower Thrasios decks that like, I mean, if I can play this, I want to play this.
Yeah, like Sick and I have been talking about it for 4-color Rush Me. And we're not quite sure yet whether we want it, because we only have like, I think,
like 14
15,
or 15
green cards in total, and most of them are cards that we don't really want to pitch.
It's hard to sell me on exiling a Keen Sense and Curious Control. Yeah.
But I'm definitely gonna put it in the maybe board at least. Same for the Hulk decks. Like, imagine being able to remove a Grafdigger's Cage and a Curse Totem at the same time.
Yeah. I am least looking forward to this card out of Hulk.
Yeah, and those decks have the green density, so it's really not an issue there.
And you also don't give a fuck about like 90 of the cards in your deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, this card's really good.
Sweet.
This is super good.
Mm-hmm. In terms of like design space, I'm actually not sure whether I like this one more or the new Force. They're just both really so cool. Good. Yeah.
The only two good ones. But they're both really good.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, can we talk about how blue got basically Force of Will, green got a double naturalize, and red got 2 3/1s that don't even stay until your next end step? They stay until the next end step?
No, isn't it like until your next upkeep or something like that?
Or something really like weird. That. Sure, they don't stick around for your turn.
Yeah, it's basically a Chandra Flamecaller activation.
But it's 2 blockers. You're bitching a red card for 2 3/1 blockers.
You'd have to pay 3 mana for those things to like be a ball lightning.
It's so bad.
It's really rough. I mean, like, I've already told you this, but my theory for this card was that the red card was something entirely different in design. Like
a lightning bolt fork lightning. It's basically 3 mana divided as you choose. Like, that's probably too strong.
And then they quickly realized that they can't do that, and this is more or less the emergency fix we got.
Yeah. Like, at least the white one makes sense, because Glorious Anthem is like, that is like a white thing to do.
Yeah.
And on your opponent's turn, it's like a cute combat trick, at least. And that is like here compared to ball lightning split in half. I just feel bad for the red players, because they get kicked daily by just being red.
It's unfortunate.
You know what isn't unfortunate?
Do tell.
Food Chain getting a Twister Loop win con that requires 0 dead cards main deck, so you don't actually have to play Prosh Maelstrom Wander? What is the, like, there was a Partners of Not things that's a no dead cards Food Chain loop, whatever. Anyways, the first sliver. This card is a Wooburg 7/7 legendary creature, Sliver, with Cascade. And Sliver spells you cast have Cascade, but the point is it has Cascade. You know what you can do with Cascade, Sigi?
Literally everything.
Not true. You cannot activate abilities of creatures with Cascade. You, in fact, can just cast all the spells in your library.
But you could hypothetically get stuff that lets you activate those abilities. But yeah, I mean, you can just cast everything in your deck.
Play Dark Ritual and you can. Good point. Yeah, so the first sliver's good because it replaces Tazri, and then you can cut those allies, and then you can just do Twister Loop shenanigans.
Yeah. And, I mean, we got Niv, which...
Rip Niv.
People thought, people generally agreed that Niv was a tiny bit better than Tazri because, we were gonna get better outlets in the future. Now, none of that matters. Instead of getting, maybe better outlets in the future, we just got a better commander altogether that can cut all of the dead stuff. I think you do need to up your like recursion density a tiny bit in the deck. But honestly, those cards that you'd be using to do that are already quite playable, so that's really not an issue, and they're really not dead cards.
Yeah, I think the list is still refining itself to the point where they're unsure if the math requires cards like Rift Sweeper. Because if you don't have to play Rift Sweeper, you really don't want to
Yeah.
play Rift Sweeper. But you also don't want to accidentally exile your Twister Loop payoffs when you consult to get to your food chain.
I do have to give a shout out to Shaper though for doing absolutely amazing work on updating the Tasby Primer for Niv first and now for the first
redoing it entirely again.
Yeah, that must have been a good deal of work.
Yeah, and an unfortunate amount of work too, because like that's just rough. Like you get so excited about the first one, and then the literal next set, you're like, all right, well, why did I do all this work?
Yeah, it's
joy turns to ashes in your mouth.
Because there's a certain win condition section of the Breakfast Hulk Primer that I've been meaning to update, but the deck's been so in flux that I just haven't bothered.
Is this the Angel of Glory's Rise, Muldrotha, Dread Return Target, the Lab Maniac, like cycling through 12 different things?
Yeah.
I talk to people and I'm like, oh yeah, you play Breakfast Hulk? Cool. What win con are you on? And they're like, yeah. Muldrotha, or no, I'm still an Angel of Glory's Rise. No, I target Lab Maniac with Dread Return. Like, it's all over the place.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Speaking of Hulk, Lesser Masticore. This isn't a Hulk, but it goes in Hulk. 2 generic mana for a 2/2 artifact creature. Masticore is an additional cost to cast this spell. Discard a card. You're never casting this spell. 4 generic mana. Lesser Masticore deals 1 damage to target creature. Persist.
Now, funnily enough, the part that's relevant about this thing isn't that it's just a persist creature, because we already have those at 2 CMC, but that it's a persist artifact creature, which means that instead of Blood Artist or like Zulaport Cutthroat, we can do a single Hulk pile in like those definitely not Varol style decks, the predecessors to Shuffle Hulk. We can use Disciple of the Vault, which is 1 CMC, so we can stuff all of the things that are needed for this combo, which is, I think, Melira, Viscera Seer, Disciple of the Vault, and this new Masticore into 1 single Hulk trigger. At instant speed, nonetheless.
Which doesn't help you, given that the pile is green-black, so you're going to have to be in blue for instant speed stuff-ish, but...
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, like, Flash Hulk.
It's a pretty good one-shot Hulk pile that's instant speed and isn't bad. And it brings us even more in line with historical precedent, because now Disciple of the Vault is our kill again. Harkening back to, like, 2007,
I think. Yeah, Legacy back Flash Hulk with
one tournament.
That was really fun.
Yeah, Disciple of the Vault, or what, Kiki nonsense, I think it was. Kiki Chord or Kiki Guide, something like
along that line also existed.
But yeah, so that's cool. And kind of a cute historical thing.
It is
not
nice
so
to
cute.
See, definitely not Varrols, 4-color Varrols, whatever you want to call them, type decks getting a bit of a revival thanks to this, since they had previously been considered dead because of Shuffle Hulk.
Yeah. Now this might bring them back out relative to Shuffle Hulk. I don't know, that is still a pretty high bar.
There's definitely some regained interest in the deck, which is nice.
Yeah. Next up, we have the worst Mox ever printed. Mox Tantalite. This is an artifact with suspend 3 for 0. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. This is a Mox without a mana cost. And if there's one thing we all love about our 0-drop fast mana, it's that we literally can't have it in play until turn 3. Right? That's why I play Mox
Isn't
Diamond.
It turn 4?
It's
right. Suspend 3, isn't it? So it's
You're right. Turn 4.
See, we don't even need the Null Rod creature to go oof on this one.
That's for sure. We're bringing it up because, well, one, it's total shit and you shouldn't play it. But two, if you do play it, you can use it alongside Lotus Bloom to do like welder loops and stuff. So you can make some mana off of your Goblin welders, and it's a
Yeah.
thing.
So this could, in theory, be another one of those synergy pieces with the Goblin Welder artifact type package, which means it's worth keeping an eye on, even if it's completely unplayable in the Suspend 3 case.
Yeah. Gorgeous art.
That's true.
I am personally offended that they put it on a card so bad. Not even Suspend 1. Like, Suspend 1
would have been insane.
Suspend 1 makes it not even insane, though. It makes it a bird of paradise.
Yeah.
Like, for all intents and purposes.
For 0 mana.
I think this would have been fine to Suspend 1.
I think it
maybe
would have
maybe
been
not
fine
in
for,
modern,
like,
but
so it depends on where you draw the line for fine, because like at Suspend 1, literally every single deck in the format plays this.
Yeah, at Suspend 2, none of them do.
If that's what you consider fine in terms of this is a card that every single deck would play, then yeah, it's fine. If you want there to be like some sort of choice involved in whether you'd play this over something else, then it wouldn't be fine.
Until I have to run 0 signets, I'm fine with continuing to push the boundaries of Moxen.
For competitive EDH, I would have been totally fine with this at Suspend 1.
But yeah, no, this would be pretty bananas in modern. So, like, I get why they didn't do it, but
Yeah.
Suspend 3 is just a kick in the balls.
It is a bit rough. I think if they had
That's
wanted
just
to
terrible.
like take a bit of a risk, they could have done Suspend 2. But
even Suspend 1 for like Suspend 2 for 0. I guess Suspend 1 for 2 mana or for 1 mana doesn't like, it's borderline a Mox at that point, but it's already borderline a Mox because it doesn't have a mana cost, and Mox are 0 drop rocks, and this isn't a 0 drop rock. So like, I don't know. It just hurts.
It is unfortunate. I agree.
This card is like a paper cut, I think, is the best way to phrase how I feel about it.
More emotionally than physically painful.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't hurt me that they printed another bad card, but it stings that they called it a Mox.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the first Mox that'll see 0 play in, like, every format.
Yeah, possibly.
Ever.
I mean, the thing is, like, just due to being called Mox, people are gonna try to play this somewhere, and they're gonna try to make it work. But it's just really unfortunate.
Going back to our density of pieces, we have Scrapyard Recombine Er. This is a 3-mana artifact creature construct. It's a 0/0 with modular 2. Tap, sacrifice an artifact, search your library for a construct card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Scrapyard Recombine Er is basically a card that you can use in conjunction with things like Scrap Trawler and stuff to loop, but getting stuff out of your deck now. So we're adding more and more orthogonal gears to this artifact recursion engine. Now you can get stuff from your deck, in addition to just getting stuff from your graveyard.
Yeah. I admittedly have absolutely no idea if this is good anywhere, but yeah, it's another piece added.
Cobble's working on stuff. Well, yeah, we'll see what he comes up with when he's done. Next up, we have 5 cards, but I'm only going to name one because I only pulled one aside because I do I set up a little browser window with tabs for each of the different cards, and I didn't want to have all 5 talismans in a row, so I just put Talisman of Curiosity, but Cameron's going to put all of them here. The rest of the Talisman cycle is here.
Yay!
This is 4 excellent cards and the Boros one. I am most excited about the blue-green Talisman because
same.
It's blue and green. And, I mean, blue-red's pretty good, too. Green-black is fine. White-black exists. We have
Basically.
talismans in the other
Yeah.
colors. Yeah, it's
So,
cool. They're good.
well, I'm not sure just how much play they're actually gonna see in the end. What I do like about them is that they add more decision making to your deck building just by being out there. Because now you need to make a conscious choice between like a Simic Signet or the new Talisman.
Talisman.
Or it
I'm
it's
deciding.
it's not 100% clear. There are situations where one is better than the other, depending on what exactly you want from your deck or what you want that specific card slot to do for you.
I want it to be the talisman.
If you want it to be the Talisman, then the Talisman wins, yeah.
Yay!
But yeah, I like that we are getting more options to do more stuff. That's always a great thing. And I think the same can probably be said about some other cards we're going to be talking about in a moment.
Yeah, pretty much the rest of the set review, actually. Before we leave the talisman cycle, I want to look the camera dead in the eye and say, Wizards, if there are any of you employees watching this, I personally will not consider the talisman cycle closed until all 10 talismans are available with the colorless mana symbol and colored actual mana symbols in foil. The archenemy printing of the Mirrodin Talisman cycle is not sufficient anymore. Please close that cycle out. But that's very nitpicky. But I'm very nitpicky. Next up, we have cards 2 through 6 of a Future Sight cycle. These are the Horizon Lands, as they have begun to be called, which is clever because they came out in Modern Horizons, and the first card in the cycle was Horizon Canopy. Do you get it, Sigi?
No, can you explain that again?
They just used the word twice. It's not actually
Yeah.
clever, but it is descriptive.
It's good.
Yeah, this green-black one especially is good.
They are. Oh yeah, for Gitrog. Oh
Yeah,
boy.
Gitrog gets a land that draws a card while it draws a card.
Nice.
And also makes mana.
Also, like the blue-red one is likely gonna go into like Kess Consult, because uncounterable draw is always nice. The black-green one, generally, I think those will replace Pain lands in many decks. So if you were playing like a, what are we getting? Are we getting blue-green?
Yes, we are.
Nice. So like blue-green and green-black, and to a lesser extent, blue-red, are often seen as Pain lands in decks. And those are going to go out, and these Horizon lands are going to go in, and it's going to be great.
For the most part. I know some people are less enthused about the fact that these do not have a colorless and painless mode on them. So being able to
Yeah, I
capitalize on the draw effect may be slightly higher priority if you're going to be running them. Just something to keep in mind, basically.
Yeah,
it is not a strict upgrade. It is just basically an upgrade.
I suppose if you're like going really hard on ad nauseum, then maybe you don't want those. But anything that doesn't do that, I think, might want those.
Yeah.
Horizon lands.
I am happy to slot the blue-green one in over Yavimaya Coast in any of my like consult backup PST variants.
Yeah.
Next, we have a fetch land that only hits basics. Prismatic Vista. I would read you the text, but I already covered it. It's a fetch land.
Yeah.
It only hits basics.
That is literally what it does. And it's good. I do enjoy getting another fetch land in my monocolor decks. 2-color decks, depending on how many basics they actually run, might want this.
Probably.
I think 3-color and up, probably not.
Definitely not most of the ones that are on consult, which is most of the 3-color decks at this point.
Yeah.
Certainly not any 5-color decks, because they're usually on, like, single basic forest.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 1 and 2 color decks get a not-so-budget fetch land.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, none of these lands are going to be cheap. They're all like $40 right now. So don't get your budget hopes up.
But maybe they're gonna calm down a bit. I mean, it's tough because they're probably gonna see a bunch of modern play, but
Yeah,
we can
I
hope.
don't know as they're going to come down much. Especially Prismatic Vista, because it has the driving force of it's a cheap fetch land, so it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, isn't it?
Funny is one word. I would go with total horseshit, but funny works too.
Yeah.
Finally, and maybe most importantly of all, Modern Horizons is giving us full art snow-covered basics. And you might think, Dan, this isn't actually a new card. Snow basics are already in the format. You play them. You would be right. But now I can play full art basics in my consult decks because they can match the full art snow basics, and that wasn't something I could do before. So, Veronique Maynard, your island is now back into Paradox Scepter Thrasios as soon as I get my hands on one of these beautiful Titus Lunter snow-covered islands.
They look really good. I love the art.
Yeah, they're nice. And on that note, we have finished reviewing cards for competitive EDH from Modern Horizons. Sigi, would you like to give some final impressions on the set?
So, this set was brought to us as a sort of love letter to the Time Spiral block, and I think they've very much fulfilled that promise, or
I agree.
Yeah, it's
a nostalgia slam dunk.
Super cool. I enjoyed like everything about this set, and it's neat that even like the draft chaff filler kind of cards have some exciting designs on them.
Yeah, like the turn to Crawworm.
Turns
you into a Crawworm. Makes you a 6/4.
That one for Modern Infect.
Yeah, it's apparently actually not very good. It's probably not going to get seen any play. No, well, because it's a sorcery speed, non-evasive, +6.
Yeah, I suppose.
Which is actually pretty iffy. I mean, it might still see play, but it's not some sort of miracle cure that makes Modern Infect tier 1. Either way, it's a sweet set.
Yeah.
Clearly someone at Wizards wants Aggro Loam to be a strategy in Modern that is like the best thing you can do. that deck got like 10 different designs in this set.
Yeah.
It's pretty silly. I love it.
I'm really looking forward to this set, and I don't know, this year so far for Magic has just been so good. Like War of the Spark was incredible. The Ravnica block as a whole was really good. Like, we even got some solid cards before War of the Spark, and then War of the Spark came and everything just like came together, and now we've got Modern Horizons and we're getting even more cards. And I love getting more cards because it means more stuff to think about when building decks, more ways to play the game.
Which is why it is unfathomable that Wizards hasn't been doing this for 20 years, because more cards we want means we spend more money.
That is also true.
Like, why are you designing bad cards so much?
But, I mean, maybe we're starting to see things change, and instead of bad cards, we're getting really fun and interesting, and sometimes even really, really good cards.
Yeah.
Like Ursa.
Yeah.
Good.
Like Ursa. I agree. This set's cool. I like it. I might even do one of those pre-release thingies at SCG Con where Cameron and I are going to be next weekend, or last weekend, depending on... God damn it, I should really talk to Cameron before we record these about when he's going to release these. I don't know
Yeah,
when he's gonna edit
you
this,
are
given that.
going to have been there.
Yeah, I am going to have been at SCG Con with Cameron, maybe doing this. And like, fingers crossed I crack a foil Ursa so I don't have to bother with those pre-order prices.
Good luck.
Yeah, I'll need it. All right. Well, this has been Modern Horizons reviewed for Competitive EDH. There is a spider in my lightbox. That's no good. I've been Dan. You've been Sigi.
Yeah, I'm Sigi.
And we would like to thank you for watching another one of our Competitive EDH set reviews. I guess we'll see you next time with whatever we record next.
Goodbye.